You said you're making money, right? You're making good money with boxing. What is it that you still want from the sport?
I haven't even accomplished anything, to be honest with you. I just
You're
want
a
to be
two-time world champion. Have you not accomplished anything?
That's not enough. That's not enough for me. You know, especially I feel like once you win the title and you win it twice, you feel like the sky's the limit because it's not a dream no more. It can be done. So now my dream right now is just to become a unified world champion at 168, and then go up from there 175, and then cruiserweight.
So what's the route to unified for you at 168?
Just keep doing what I'm doing. I was supposed to fight for all the belts already against Canelo. You know, I'm number one mandatory for Canelo, but if that fight's not going to make it happen, then the good thing about me is I still have a long time. I'm 25 years old, and what really doesn't discourage me at all is you look at a lot of other great champions like Terrence Crawford, Earl Spence, Andre Ward, Deontay Wilder. Those dudes were not two-time world champion at 25.
Right.
They were not. I think they started coming into their prime at 27. Earl Spence, how old was he when he won his first world title? Like 27? So I'm already ahead of those guys.
Well, what does that mean in terms of how you look at yourself? Do you see yourself as a young fighter because you are young, like you say you're 25? Or do you look at yourself compared to like a Shakur Stevenson, a Teofimo Lopez, those guys that are coming through and consider yourself an OG because of the amount of time that you've been in the pros already?
Yeah, I feel like a young veteran. but but honestly, I've been professional for 9 years. That's almost 10 years. That's almost a decade right there.
Yeah.
I feel like I put the groundwork in to make all these big fights already, and I'm surprised they haven't happened already. Like with Caleb Plant, Charlo, all these other guys, like I'm ready for it.
Obviously, you say you would love some of those younger guys, undefeated guys. There are names that people would love to see David fight that are always mentioned, like a Jermall Charlo or a Caleb Plant, are kind of two of the top names, alongside a Canelo as well, right? Everybody looks, I think, at the Jermall Charlo and the Caleb Plant fight and thinks, why can this one not be made? Because, you know, you're both within that PBC family. There's no issues with networks, with any kind of cross-promotional issues. Can you explain what the stumbling block is to getting those fights made, if those are the ones that you want?
We want to fight all these guys, but these guys don't want to fight them. You know, these fights could be made so easy because at the end of the day, we're not looking for money. I think that once we beat these guys, money will come, you know, so that's an easy fight to make. I believe that Al Heyman is working very hard on it. Al Heyman is the one that makes all these decisions. Our job is to stay ready.
And so you were saying, though, I think it was back in March, you were saying that negotiations were happening with Caleb Plant for that fight to take place. What happened? Why did that go away?
You know what? I'm tired now. You know, I went out of my way and got myself a little bit into trouble because that's not my job to make fights. That's Al Heyman, and he does a great job for that. But, you know, sometimes you just get so mad, you know, that these guys talk a lot of stuff about David, but they don't want to set that fight. So, I went off my way and I did send Caleb Plant, hey, let's make this fight very respectful. Let's try to make this fight. You need this fight. We need this fight. No answer. So I talked to Luis de Cuba, his manager, and that's when he said, oh, yeah, I think we're going to work on it. And then he said, no, we don't want to fight. So that's it, you know. So I went, like I said, I did things that I wasn't supposed to be doing. You know, like I said, I did get in trouble a little bit, but you know, that's not my.
Who did you get in trouble with?
Not really in trouble, but they say, hey, no, you're not that big. You don't make decisions, you know.
It's not your job.
Your job is to. That's not your job, you know. And I'm like, I apologize. I'm sorry. It will not happen again, you know. So no, they just told me, you know. I mean, everybody has a role here, and you know, we have to respect that. But like I said, you know, I just want people to know that we'll fight anybody at 168, at 175. It doesn't matter, you know. We're not saying that we're better than anybody else, but we would love to test ourselves and see how far we can go.
If those are kind of the two main fights that are being talked about, the Jermall Charlo one and the Caleb Plant one, hoping that they would at some point happen in the near future, which one do you think is the tougher fight for David?
I will say Charlo will be the toughest because Charlo, you know, he's an undefeated fighter. He's been a world champion for a long time. He's a very slick fighter, a really good fighter. Caleb Plant really hasn't really fought a lot of guys that were very dangerous, you know. Nothing to take away from him. He's a good fighter.
Other than Canelo?
Other than Canelo, but look, he got beat by Canelo. So, I mean, he's still a dangerous fighter. It would still be an interesting fight. You know, we would love to fight him. That's a fight that we would love to make. Charlo, Bivol, Andrade, or Canelo, you know. But I think right now we're leaning towards more Charlo. Hopefully that fight can happen. But like I said, I would leave that to our advisor and our promotion and see what happens. We're just, you know, now we just got to stay ready. We got to stay focused. We got to take care of business on May 21st, look impressive. And that's the only thing we have to do. We have to keep winning and looking good in order to get those big fights. Those fights are going to come sooner or later.
Is there one of those two fights, though, between Charlo and Plant that feels more personal to you, where there's more of a personal score to settle? Which fight has more beef?
Both of them. David really wants to kick Caleb Plant's ass, you know, so he really wants that fight. Charlo, you know, now he's talking. I think I would say Caleb Plant is number one, Charlo's number two, but either or. I think we should fight. We should have a tournament, and we should all get in the ring there. You know, make them fight. You know, whoever. You know, David Benavidez, Charlo, Caleb Plant, and maybe David Morrell get in that tournament and fight.
So you mentioned a couple of the fights out there that would be perceived as bigger fights for you, right? Which would be the Jermall Charlo fight, the Caleb Plant fight. Which of those two fighters do you think is the better fighter, Caleb Plant or Jermall Charlo?
I feel like they both got their good abilities. They're both different fighters. Caleb Plant is more of a boxer. Charlo is more of a he's a brawler, he's a puncher. I can't really tell you who's harder or who's better fighter. They're both top level fighters. At this level, you just gotta be ready, because there's no easy fight no more. They're both good fighters. They're both world champions.
But people judge off the eye test, right? You can't make a judgment off the eye test. Which of the two you think is the better guy?
The more dangerous guy is Charlo, because he has more knockout power. The thing about Caleb Plant, he doesn't have knockout power, but he could box around you. But the thing about it is, when somebody doesn't have knockout power, they're more susceptible to get knocked out themselves because they can't hurt their opponent.
So even though he's a true 168 pounder, you think the more dangerous fight is Jermall Charlo?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So you've already been a champion twice, right? You went pro at 16. Where do you go from here? You said undisputed. How much longer do you see yourself at 168 to make that happen before you then make the move to 175? And would you be making the move because you feel like you need to, because cutting weight is getting harder, which it does with age, right? Or is it just because I want to be at multiple divisions and add those accolades?
The only reason I'll move up to 175 is if I can't get the fights with Caleb Plant, Canelo, or Charlo.
Within what time frame? What's the period of time you look at and say, I have to get those fights within what?
Maybe the next 2 years.
Okay.
I don't see why it wouldn't be possible to make those fights happen in the 2 years, because if you really look at it, Charlo, he's closer to the end of his career than he is to his prime. So who else is he fighting? You know, he's talking about he makes so much money, this and that. He would make 10 times more money fighting me than the guy he's fighting now. He's fighting, no disrespect to the guy, he's a Polish guy, but I don't really know who he is. He's never been a world champion. That wouldn't be a pay-per-view fight. Me and him could potentially be a pay-per-view fight. Caleb Plant, you know, he just came off the loss. He said he wants to fight Canelo again, but he's not going to get to Canelo again if he doesn't fight me. So we all kind of need each other, you know. So I feel like I've been saying this for a while. I feel like a lot of these fighters are so arrogant that they don't admit that we all need each other. Mm-hmm. I need them to get to the next level, and they need me to get to the next level.
You talked about moving up potentially to 175. That was something that David said when I spoke to him too, that he said, if I don't within the next 2 years get some of these big fights at 168, then I will move up to 175.
Yeah.
What do you think the time frame should be though? 2 years sounds like a long time.
If they give us a fight with Bivol, another great champion that I respect, and he's a great champion, I will go, maybe after the fight, we'll go, whatever happens, we'll go to 175. If it was Bivol, man, that's another guy that, yeah, we got to be the best in order to be the best. He just beat Canelo. So that would be a great fight. David moving up to 175, fighting Bivol, a monster. To me, now he's a monster at 175. Bivol is one of the best fighters right now at 175. So if we will have the opportunity to fight him, then we will go to 175 right away.
Do you consider Bivol now pound for pound number one? Does beating the pound for pound king make you the pound for pound king, or does it not work like that?
I don't think it works like that, but he has my respect. And he's one of the best right now. Mm-hmm. He beat the king at 168, the king that was supposed to beat everybody at every weight. So, I mean, I got to give him a lot of respect. And he looked fantastic. He looked super good in that fight. So, my respect, my respect to Bivol. And I guarantee you that nobody knew Bivol, really. Now, all the world knows Bivol. So, I mean, everybody knows Bivol now, especially the Mexicans.
I mean, you mentioned...
They will never forget that name.
You mentioned Boo Andrade as well, right? As a potential fight that you guys would be interested in. Do you ever worry? Cause he's one of those fighters that basically nobody else is calling out. David has been consistently calling him out, but nobody else seems to, right? And he's one of those fighters that has struggled to really create the legacy that he perhaps has the potential to, because he can't get the fights that he wants that would help him reach that next level. Do you ever worry about David being that guy as well?
Big shout out to Bubu and his father, good champion, good person too, a lot of respect for him, for Bubu. No, because, David's a different fighter. David is an exciting fighter. David's a fighter that's going to come and give everything inside the ring. He's going to come forward. The reason that, that they don't like Bubu because of the style he has. I like his style. He's a really good, smart fighter,
But I'm not saying popular with the fans or not. I'm saying other fighters don't want to fight him. Avoid it.
I think David's in another position now. I think now they don't want to fight him, but they are going to have to fight him sooner or later. It's going to come to a point. Unfortunately, I want to thank every African American, because we have a lot of those fans now because of Charlo, because he's ducking David. So now there are pressuring these fighters. At the end of the day, the people are the ones that demand those fights, and we just got to be patient. And I think no, we're good. We're good in the position we are. I think the fights are going to have to happen. Like I said, we just got to stay focused and disciplined. And they are, boxing changes so much. That opportunities come every day. We got to be ready, because if we're not ready, all those opportunities are going to go.
Canelo is another name that's always associated with David, and that people say, Canelo's been ducking David Benavidez. Which fight do you think is more interesting? Canelo versus Triple G or Canelo versus David Benavidez?
Well, of course, 100%. Canelo against David Benavidez, people will go nuts with that, I mean, that's a fight that everybody wants to see. Right now, people are not really interested in that fight, Canelo Bivol. It's the same now with Canelo and Triple G. It's not the same anymore. So people are not super interested with that fight. But when you have a hungry lion like David Benavidez fighting a guy that just lost to Bivol, it makes it very exciting, and it makes it very interesting.
Do you consider David more dangerous than Demetrius Bivol?
Well, let me put it to you. Big shout out to Bivol. You know how I feel about Bivol. We spar Bivol, And let me tell you, of what I've seen, I'm very confident that we could do better than Bivol, of what I've seen, And even though it's sparring, bigger gloves, headgear, but I think David has more arsenal. He has more tools, He's only 25 years old, and being compared with all these big fighters that are 30 years old, 31, 32, imagine where's he going to be like in a year or two. Right now, he's very dangerous, I believe. So I think people are interested, and I think David will give him a better fight at 168. So I hope it happens.
So with all these prospective fights on the horizon, all these interesting names on the horizon for David, if you were a betting man, this is assuming, of course, he gets past David Lemieux. Are you a betting man, by the way? First question, I guess.
No, never. I never bet.
You never bet?
I'm wrong. I can never, and I don't know. I don't like gambling. And honestly, if I would have bet, I would have bet on Canelo. And look what happened. So,
But
I
if you
don't
had to
know.
bet now on what will be David's next fight following David Lemieux, assuming that he does get past David Lemieux, what would be where would you put your money on what will be David's next fight?
I think next fight it will be Charlo. I see that fight
You do?
closer than Caleb Plant or Canelo. I think Charlo.
And you think it
More
happens
closer.
this year?
I think it has to happen this year, if not the beginning of next year.